Hi guys, my name's Naomi and welcome to my channel. So today I just kind of wanted to jump on here and give you a little bit of advice on how to study for your exams because it's Thanksgiving weekend here in Canada, and I know this is always such a stressful time for college students, university students, and all students in general, just writing exams either the week prior or the week coming up, and you're sitting at Thanksgiving dinner thinking about that exam that you have next week that you're not studying for. Well, at least I did, because I even remember when I was in university that I was sitting there at Thanksgiving dinner studying geology notes on my phone. So I just wanted to jump on here and kind of give you some tips and tricks of how I kind of studied for exams. And I guess the first tip would be, don't leave it till last minute. This is something that you really have to get in a good habit of, and starting your assignments like way before they're due, like a week or two before they're due. As soon as you learn that material in class, you need to go home and study it and understand it yourself, and work on your assignments, and just make sure that you're not copying your friends' assignments, or if you have assignment solutions, which a lot of the time in engineering you do. You might have solutions to those assignments, but you don't want to copy them, because if you're copying them, then you're not understanding what's going on. And the main thing about doing well on exams is that you study the material at the beginning or halfway through the semester, so you learn it way before you get to exam time. So if you're struggling to do that assignment during the semester, then that's perfectly fine, because you're learning and you're understanding and you're taking the time to learn that material. And if you don't get it, just the next time you go to class, ask your prof, and if you don't understand what he's saying, go ask a friend, go ask someone else to explain it to you, or tell your prof, I don't understand the way that you're telling me, can you maybe draw it out on the board or write it out in my notebook or something, because I know for myself personally, I'm a visual person. And another thing that I did, there was a specific prof that I maybe didn't really understand what they were trying to tell me, because I guess like communication between the two of us didn't really work that well, and like I just didn't really understand what they were trying to say. I would bring a friend up with me while I asked the question, so that either one of us could hopefully understand, and we kind of all did this. So if any of us had a question, we'd kind of go up as a group, or at least two of us would go up to the prof and ask the question, so that when we're trying to understand and learn it and gain that knowledge from the prof, that we can kind of both sink it in. We go home and then we try and figure it out together. So that's a great tip. What you don't want to do is get to midterms or finals and then trying to learn the material, because now it's too late. You're under too much stress, you're under too much pressure to figure it out, and you're gonna start panicking, and you're just gonna start copying answers again. So you're gonna look at your assignment solutions and you're gonna copy them. And then when you're sitting there on that test and the prof has changed one little part of a question, you're not gonna know how to manipulate it and get around it to answer that question. And I'm speaking with a background in civil engineering. So I got my college diploma and university degree in civil engineering. So I had to do a lot of problem solving. And this is a method that I found really worked for me. So I just wanted to pass it along to you guys. And another thing that I love to do for midterms and exams. So this is kind of my holy grail trick, and this is what I did when I took, honestly, like 8 courses a semester, which is a complete overload. It's extremely hard. You have to work very hard to accomplish it. But basically what I did is I printed out my exam schedule. So say I had 8 or 9 exams, because you may have a lab exam as well. What I did was I would print out the exam schedule. So usually I didn't have like exams back to back in one day. Sometimes I did, but usually I had at least like 24 hours or less, sometimes a bit more in between each exam. So I worked backwards. So let's say we're a week before Thanksgiving. And sorry, you can't rewind time, so like maybe we can try this during finals. So basically what I did is a few weeks before my exams, I looked at the exam that I had last, and that's what I would study first. So basically I would work it out so that I would have like a day or two for each exam, and I may not have 2 days, I may only have 1 day. So what I would do is I'd study my last exam first for a day or two, whatever I had, and that was it. So that's also a good motivation that like, you have this 1 day to study that course, and that's it until the day before the actual exam. So now the next day I would study my second last exam, and you kind of merge it and you keep going until your first exam. And then when you get to your first exam, you're going to leave like at least 2 days to study that one because you didn't get the original day to study it. So then now when you get to your first exam, you have enough time to study, like you know yourself, you know how long you'll need to relearn the material that you've already learned during the semester, because you're not learning from scratch here, you're just remembering what you did during the semester basically. So you're going to study that exam, and then you get to the next exam and you're like, hey, I've already reviewed this, and you've reviewed it recently because you worked backwards. Okay, so this is kind of confusing. So your second exam, that was the second last thing that you studied basically. So it's kind of a little bit fresh in your head. And then you get to the next one and you've studied that one a little bit recent. Then when you get to the last one, hopefully you have a little bit more time to really revise because you kind of haven't looked at that one in a little while. And another thing that I just want to say is when you're studying, don't look at what your friends are doing or what your classmates are doing. So say your friends are a few chapters ahead of you. Don't get upset by it. Some people are slower at studying and slower at learning the material, and that's completely fine. And I was one of those people. So my friends would study the question, they'd finish it as fast as they can to get it over with, and they'd go play FIFA and sit on the couch. And for me, I could honestly sit there for like an hour doing that question because I wouldn't rush through it because I like to talk to myself when I'm working through a question. So I would kind of sit there and say, okay, I'm given this. These are the equations that I have. This is what I'm looking for. How am I going to get there? So I'd kind of work through, and then it kind of also allows you to get that thinking process while you're in the exams because that's how you studied before the exam. That's what you're going to revert to when you're on the exam and you're freaking out and the exam is completely opposite or completely different than your study material, because that's what's going to happen in engineering. Your exam is going to be crazy. Like, I've walked into exams and I've opened them up and I've honestly laughed because I thought, I am so screwed. I have no idea what's going on. But then you have to calm down, take a moment and say, you know what? Okay, what do I have? What am I working with? And what equations do I know that are my main equations, or that I know that I can basically look at to get me started. So you're just gonna, even if you don't really know where to start, you might just get yourself started on the equations that you really know and feel comfortable with. And another thing, when you're studying for those assignments, like, yeah, look at the answers, because if you're not gonna sit there forever like trying to figure it out. You're not gonna remember absolutely everything you learned in class. And to be honest, I was the person that I didn't really retain much in class. I had to go home and review the material and do it myself to really understand. So that's what I did. So I would go home and learn the material myself, and that's how I studied. And I think that's almost it for my tips. And my absolute final tip is when you're doing exams, I know this is a stressful time, but you need to look at it like you've studied for a day or two. You've learned the material during the semester. Now it's exam time. This is the second or third time you've learned this material, and you're just revising and refreshing your memory, remembering everything and things like that. And basically this is the time that you say, I feel ready and I'm done and I'm excited to do this exam, because when I do this exam, it means it's over. So no matter how hard the exam is, you should be excited because you're ready for it. You studied what you can do, and now you're gonna almost be done it. And after these 3 hours, or however long your exam is, you're in engineering, it's probably gonna be 3 hours, at least 2 hours if it's a midterm, probably 3, to be honest. I think all of mine were like 3-hour exams. And just be excited to get it over with. And another thing that I also keep in mind is you have to realize the type of person you are when you study. Like, I realized when I first went to university, I did a transition program. So I went from college into third year university, and we had to do a summer transition before we get into third year basically. So during my first exam, I stayed up all night, and I think I had like 2 hours of sleep, and my exam was at like 8 a.m. or something. I walked into that exam, I looked at my piece of paper, and I honestly could barely write my name. So this is when I thought I was gonna throw up. So this is the time that I realized I am not the type of person that can stay up all night and study. I can't do it, because when I get to the exam, I forget absolutely everything I've studied, and now I'm screwed because I feel like I'm gonna throw up. I don't even remember the basics of like math that I learned years and years and years ago. and I've been staying up all night drinking energy drinks, and this was my first time really drinking energy drinks. I usually never drink them. So that's something that I had to keep in mind. That was my first university final exam, and I learned my lesson. Like, I knew that I was not the type of person that could stay up and pull all-nighters to study and cram and things like that. I had to prepare way in advance. I had to learn the material when I did assignments, and then I had to revise with my schedule of my backward studying towards my exam schedule, or towards my exams, and that's what worked for me. And I had a cutoff. So after that, I basically had a cutoff that I wouldn't go to bed later than 1:30 in the morning. And that's like the latest, no matter how late my exam was. If my exam the next day was at like 11 a.m., it doesn't matter. I need a full night's sleep. And if I wake up and say my exam's at like 11 a.m., and I want to wake up at like 8:30 just to study a few more questions, and I wake up and I have a headache and I feel so exhausted, I'm just so tired and I can't think and I'm not functioning, then I will just hit the snooze button. I'll wake up 30-45 minutes later and realize that, like, okay, I'm gonna wake up and only have time to basically do like either read a question or quickly do one question, which is dangerous, because if you do a question the morning of an exam and you don't get it right, oh my God, your confidence is like, whew. So be careful with that. In some cases, I maybe wouldn't even do a full question. I would just review the steps, because otherwise, if you get something wrong the morning of, you might freak out. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Maybe this is not just a quick tip video. This is like an in-depth of like how I studied and conquered those exams. So that's something to keep in mind, that in the morning, if you're the type of person that wakes up and is so exhausted and can't think when you're exhausted, then sleep in a little bit, because it's worth it. You've already learned the material, you know the material. Cramming the day of doesn't help. And then another thing that I did was, I know for engineering, like, I would say at least 70 to 90% of your exam is going to be math based. So I usually studied the theory, I don't know, like either the night before at the end of my study period, or honestly, if my boyfriend was driving or something, I would study on the 5 minutes on the way to the exam, basically, because the chunk of your mark is going to be based on that math. And I am literally thinking of so many other things to tell you for studying for exams. So I guess I will just have a couple of them that I'll say. When you're working on an exam and you are absolutely in a pinch and you can't get the answer and you don't know what you're doing, you have too many unknowns, make an assumption and write that assumption down. So if you write to your profs and you tell them what you're doing, they're more likely to give you part marks for it, because they realize that you understand the background and the theory of the question and what you're doing and the problem solving steps. So if you articulate those problem solving steps to your prof, they're more likely going to give you some part marks in there. So for instance, if I was doing a structural problem and I had too many unknowns and I said, you know what, I have too many unknowns, I'm going to assume that this reaction and this reaction are zero because of whichever reason, because of where they are in this building or whatever, right? So you're going to make an assumption and you're going to explain that to your prof. And if they're a really nice prof, they might even go all the way through your math and look at your steps and see if you did the steps right and give you like almost full marks. So that's another hack. But now I'm just going to leave it here. And I guess I will have to do another video on like tips and tricks. I will make sure to write them all down, make a list, and make another video before exam time. But for now, keep studying for your exams. Don't stress if you take longer than your friends. It's fine. Everyone takes their own amount of time to learn things. Make sure you're properly learning things. Don't give up. Really understand the material before you get to the exam, because memorizing any steps at all is not going to help you problem solve when you get to that exam. And be confident in yourself and know that you studied the best you can. And I guess my final tip is to realize there's going to be a moment when you're finished studying and you're going to say, this is the best I can do. Like, this is the absolute best I can do. I believe I know all of the material, and I think this is honestly the best point I'm going to get to. And there's nothing more that I can do that will make me more prepared for this exam. So sometimes you just need to go to bed and say, this is the best I could do. I'm done. And I'm excited to write this exam tomorrow so that it's over and I get to relax a little bit. So good luck on your exams. Study the best you can. Don't pull all-nighters, or do if you're the type of person that can, but don't test that personality if it's your first exam. Maybe work your way into that. I personally don't think it's a good idea to do all-nighters because you're just ruining your sleep pattern for following exams and things like that. I think staying on a good schedule is an awesome idea. So yeah, good luck in your exams, and I will talk to you all later, and I will definitely upload some exam tricks and how I got through passing civil engineering with a decent average and having 8 courses a semester. So I will see you on the next one, and if you're interested in seeing more tips and tricks from me about exams, and this doesn't have to be only engineering, it could be array of programs, but kind of focus on, like, if you have a ton of courses, then hit that like, share, and subscribe button down below, and let me know what courses you guys are in, because I'm interested to see if I can gain an audience in like civil engineering or other audiences. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!